You know, when we talk about global sustainability, we usually picture things like carbon credits, complex supply chains, or massive international treaties. But what if that's entirely backwards? Welcome to This Explainer, where today we're exploring a really profound framework by an architect of change who completely flips the script. She argues that you actually cannot achieve global sustainability without first locking in your own deeply intimate, personal moral compass. We're looking at the incredible work of Oluyomi Ola-David. We're going to break down her systemic visual models and then dive into the deeply personal manifesto that fuels her work. It's a fascinating journey from the macro right down to the micro, so let's just jump right in.
Right off the bat, look at how quickly she draws a hard line in the sand with this quote. She writes, "Count me in to vision, count me out of agenda." In the incredibly complex world of global development, let's be honest, there are a lot of hidden motives. But by stating she is in for vision and out for agenda, she's demanding absolute authenticity. She's telling us right up front that true transformation requires a pure, unobstructed focus on the end goal, not some self-serving ulterior motive. I want you to keep this quote in the back of your mind, because this fierce demand for authenticity, it's literally the engine driving her entire framework.
Okay, so she maps out this big macro vision using a concept she calls the sustainability case. It's set up like a classic Venn diagram, and she identifies three main pillars as these large outer circles. Up on the top left, we've got the circular economy. Top right is social justice, and down at the bottom, planet nature. She argues that sustainability isn't just focusing on one of these things in isolation. It's the ultimate convergence of all three of them. But as you'll see, the real genius of her model, it lies in the overlaps.
Let's break down where the real magic happens in those intersections. First up is where circular economy meets social justice. She defines this specific intersection as equity. And this is crucial because a circular economy, where we reuse materials and eliminate waste, is honestly completely meaningless if it's only benefiting the wealthy, right? Equity is that resulting balance when economic resources and opportunities are actually managed justly for all people. She is telling us point blank that you cannot separate the flow of money and materials from basic human rights.
Moving over to the right side of her model, we find this vital overlap between social justice and planet nature, which she labels resilience. Now, this is fascinating. She illustrates resilience as the necessary harmony between protecting human populations and respecting planetary boundaries. Think about it. If you champion social justice but completely ignore the collapsing environment, society just won't last. On the flip side, if you protect nature but displace indigenous people to do it, you lack true resilience. Her framework demands that we protect the vulnerable while simultaneously protecting the earth they actually live on.
To finish up our breakdown of this diagram, let's look at the final intersection, the space between the circular economy and planet nature. She positions value right here in this pocket. Now think about what this really means. She is entirely redefining value creation. It's no longer just about profit margins on a spreadsheet. In her case, true value is born directly at the nexus of circular, zero-waste business practices and a really deep reverence for the natural world. It's only when all three of these overlaps, equity, resilience, and value, are achieved that we finally reach that tiny center point, true sustainability.
So now that we understand the macro mechanics of her model, let's actually meet the architect behind them, Oluyomi Ola-David. When we're dealing with massive, abstract concepts like planetary boundaries and global justice, it's so easy to lose sight of the human element. But as we're going to see, her identity, her personal philosophy, and her background are absolutely central to why this framework even exists in the first place.
Let's ground these lofty sustainability concepts in her actual biography. As noted in the source texts, she is a proud Nigerian who explicitly states that she just loves people. She's deeply concerned with global development and transformation. But here's the thing, she isn't just a theorist sitting in a room. She is a pragmatist. Her entire focus is on generating actual solutions, influencing real-world policy and strategy, and providing crystal clarity where there's confusion. She uses her highly strategic mind to drive tangible transformation. She looks at the chaos of the world, chaos I think we all feel right now, and she builds structures to actually make sense of it.
But where does all this drive actually come from? Her foundation is surprisingly intimate. In her bio, she writes this: "My Father God owns and rules the universe. He is the wheel within my wheels." It is incredibly rare to see raw, personal spiritual faith cited as the direct engine for a clinical economic framework, but that is exactly what's happening here. For her, the pursuit of social justice and planetary care isn't just some academic exercise. It's a profound spiritual calling. This spiritual anchor is the absolute heartbeat of her systemic clinical models. It's the inner engine,
that wheel within her wheels that propels all of her strategic work outward into the world. And that brings us to a really remarkable piece of text she published on March 11, 2022, titled Case in Point. It reads almost like a highly rhythmic poem or a personal manifesto. In it, she zooms all the way in. We're moving from those huge global systems of the circular economy right down to the individual moral choices required of a single human being. She realizes that to achieve the macro sustainability case we just looked at, you have to first establish your own internal case in point.
Let's lean into the poetic rhythm of her text here because it's great. She sets up these stark binary choices. Count me into duty, count me out of stupidity. By octably choosing the responsibility to care for others and the planet, she is fiercely, unequivocally rejecting foolishness. She leaves absolutely no gray area here.
Continuing this rapid-fire tempo, we see her next assertion. Count me into truth. Count me out of illusion. Think about how perfectly this applies to global development. I mean, how many environmental campaigns are really just greenwashing? How many corporate policies are just comfortable illusions? She's expressing an absolute, unflinching commitment to truth, no matter how difficult it is to face, and a total rejection of the comforting lies that ultimately hold our society back.
And the drumbeat of her manifesto continues. Count me into peace, count me out of chaos. Notice her deliberate alignment here. Achieving that social justice circle we saw earlier, that requires systemic peace. She isn't just passively wishing for peace, she is actively counting herself out of the noise, the infighting, and the destructive behaviors that prevent resilient communities from forming in the first place. She's actively cultivating the exact mindset required for her own framework to succeed.
Now, notice the direct, explicit parallel she draws back to her macro framework here. She declares, count me in to value, count me out of waste. Remember the Venn diagram? Value was the direct intersection of the circular economy and planet nature. Here, she's making it a personal vow. She personally commits to creating value in her everyday life while intentionally shunning waste. It is just a perfect, beautiful mirror between her internal philosophy and her external economic theory.
To conclude this rapid sequence from her manifesto, she offers something incredibly vital for today's world. She says, count me into patience, count me out of hurry. In a world that is just so obsessed with overnight success and instant shipping, she recognizes that real sustainable development, true social justice, and healing planetary boundaries, that requires immense patience. By rejecting the frantic rush of modern life, she is adopting the exact temporal mindset required for long-term, multi-generational sustainability.
So, let's bring the whole shebang together. Her intimate internal values directly correspond to her external global goals. The value from her poem maps directly to value creation in her framework. Her personal desire for peace maps perfectly to the global goal of social justice. And her demand for truth is the absolute bedrock for governance and rational choice. What she's showing us is a real game changer. You simply cannot build a sustainable world out there if you don't first have a sustainable principled architecture in here, within yourself.
We've covered a lot of really fascinating ground in this explainer today, moving from Oluyomi Oladevid's high-level global systems right down to the intimate rhythm of her personal convictions. Her work proves that true sustainability isn't just some abstract policy change, it's a profound, daily, personal choice. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought inspired directly by her framework. In the pursuit of sustainability, what are you counting yourself into? And perhaps just as importantly, what are you counting yourself out of? Thank you so much for exploring this brilliant architecture with me today.